Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a topical video that we've kind of had on our minds for a few weeks, if not a few months, and it's been kind of building up. And my thoughts were we could either talk about it now, and if we don't, we'll probably end up talking about it on our first episode of Raw Twit Wow since August. And we know that episode's probably already going to be long enough as it is, so we figured we would just do this in a completely separate commentary. And there's quite a lot that we want to hit on, but mostly we want to talk about the John Cena injury and the implications that that has. But then we want to talk about a little bit more of a broad topic and just kind of discuss WWE's treatment of their talent. So, John, if you have any kind of large, brush strokes that you want to get out of the way at this point, go ahead.
It's just a very interesting time for the WWE. When you look at their roster and you look at the injuries that are piling up, it's funny, bro, because I was telling you in conversation before we recorded that, we normally take injuries as just a part of the business. It always sucks, don't get me wrong, but we more or less come and go with it. But never can I remember them happening at this kind of frequency, and especially the big names that have been hit. So I think we're due for a very interesting conversation today, you and I.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the big elephant in the room is John Cena's hurt. And not only is he hurt, but he has just recently, I believe on the 7th of January, gotten pretty major surgery to repair what we believe to be a torn rotator cuff. Is that correct?
Yes, that is how I understood it.
Okay. Now, a normal human being would usually be out for anywhere from 6 to 9 months with this. So because John Cena is John Cena, I'm guessing he'll be back by May.
Yeah, I would think May as well, but what's interesting about that is you and I both seem to agree he is definitively missing WrestleMania 32 this year.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, granted, he is John Cena and he's a freak and he sometimes returns before he should, which is another part of what we're going to be talking about later. But I feel like it would take some really exceptional kind of miracle, even in the John Cena kind of freakish recovery time situation, for him to be back in time for Mania. Because, I mean, if you just look at the schedule, Mania is at this point 3 months away. I mean, January to February, February to March, March to April, and it's on, I believe, April 3rd this year.
Yes. And, you're absolutely right. John Cena's been known to really beat the timetables, to come back, way ahead of schedule. I think it's part of that whole, superhero kind of mantra, that babyface mantra, but not this time. And I think it really is almost poetic that it's, this time that he's not going to be able to rally back, because from what I understand, this will be the first WrestleMania he's missed because of injury and just being off the card, like, in general. That's huge. So, a lot going on there.
It's probably the first since, what, like 17 maybe? Or no, I guess one was in 1985, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, around there. Uh,
So yeah, that would mean that it would be the first since like WrestleMania 19, I want to say, that he's missed.
yeah, because I believe John Cena's WrestleMania debut was at WrestleMania 20, because that was
Oh,
when he faced the Big Show for the U.S.
okay. So then
Championship.
19 was the last one that we didn't have seen at Mania before.
Yeah, so you're talking like 12 years later, like at 32. That's crazy.
It is.
Wow, man.
Yeah, but what I really wanted to talk about, and really with John Cena, I think the biggest issue is who does Undertaker face at WrestleMania now? Because you and I both kind of had Roman Reigns slotted to face Brock Lesnar. We both probably think Lesnar's winning the Royal Rumble, and then Reigns is going to face him for the title. And that would have left John Cena to face Taker, and that match, even though I'm sure some people would protest it, makes a lot of sense. It's pretty much the last thing that John Cena hasn't done in his career is face Taker at Mania. And it would be in Texas, and whoever wins that match, it would make for an interesting storyline. But regardless, it's not happening now. So to me, the big question becomes, what does the Undertaker do at WrestleMania?
I have two ideas, and I think you'd only like one of them.
Well, what's the one that I wouldn't like then?
The one that you wouldn't like is Sheamus. Immediately came to my mind. Taker
Oh,
versus Sheamus this
I
year.
wouldn't dislike that, honestly. I mean, I feel like if you're going to just kind of put someone in there who's going to make Taker look good, who's going to work a relatively safe match, and Taker gets a big victory in his hometown to kind of close out what's most likely going to end up being his career. Sheamus works, in my opinion.
See, to me, Sheamus, and I'll be honest, between the two, that one's the more logical of the two people I'm thinking. The other one is way fantasy booking, but I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
But to me, Sheamus just got done a world title run. You know it's not going to be long before he's out of the mix completely, and he's kind of taken that step down. But to me, Sheamus, when you've really given him the platform, he's done the best heel work that he can do given the current climate, and I think that's actually a pretty exceptional job, in my opinion. I'll defend Sheamus here. So I think, to kind of keep him in the mix of relevance, to keep him in that kind of top heel tier, I mean, have him have a segment where he bro kicks The Undertaker. Just think, well, if I can't be WWE World Heavyweight Champion, I'm going to go after the next best thing. I'm going to kick around The Undertaker. And,
Yeah.
I think, given how everything's kind of fallen together, I think Sheamus actually makes the most sense to me personally. But
it's so funny you bring Sheamus up because I hadn't even realized, like, it never even crossed my mind that he might be a possibility. So you're actually bringing someone to the forefront that didn't even cross my mind. So I'm glad you brought him up because to me, there were a few options, but he wasn't even one that I considered.
Now, we're all going to get our laughs out of our system, including me, but the one that I would love, and I know is pure fantasy booking, I'd love if Kevin Owens could step up and face The Undertaker this year.
Yeah, that would be cool. I agree. That would be interesting. And like I said, if you're just looking for that top heel guy that can face Taker, put Taker over in his hometown and, kind of let Taker have his moment, I think that Owens and Sheamus are both good options. Yeah.
Honestly, and you know what? Even though I loved your fantasy idea, and for the record, the only reason I opted for Sheamus is because I believe this will actually materialize into reality of Owen Zayn for the Intercontinental title. I mean, you could have the Intercontinental Champion not have to defend the belt. If anything, I think that kind of raises the profile of the title. Like, oh, the Intercontinental Champion's facing the Undertaker at WrestleMania if they want him to come out on the winning end against Ambrose, or you could just have Ambrose retain, one or the other. And Kevin Owens' logic could be, well, on my first night, I beat John Cena, so at my first WrestleMania, I'm going to beat The Undertaker.
Yeah.
And you could do something like that.
I like that. Yeah, that's interesting. I would just keep the title on Ambrose, honestly.
Yeah, I would too. I agree with you. No need to overcomplicate things when you can get more bang. You can get more mileage out of your roster by having a separate Intercontinental Champion and a separate IC title match.
I mean, we're getting these two big New Japan names in. We could have one of them go after the U.S. title, one of them go for the Intercontinental title, and then we get Ambrose, Nakamura, and Del Rio Styles, or you could switch those, but still, either way, it works out.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So those are my two guys that I would really love to see face The Undertaker now that John Cena's off the table. Both of them are heels, so they completely acknowledge Undertaker's, babyface territory of Texas. It doesn't even really create that much of a dichotomy or a controversy or what have you. And I think both guys could really use the rub, especially Owens, because, man, I don't want to get into it, but you know how I feel like he could be a top heel at a moment's notice if they just gave a damn. And that'd be a great program. So, yeah, those are the two guys I had in mind. But what are you thinking for, John Cena's absence in WrestleMania? How does your kind of card shake out? I mean, I guess specifically The Undertaker, since that's our point of conversation.
Yeah, well, thinking? I think, to me, the one option that we haven't really touched on is adding Taker to the championship match. You could do the triple threat, Taker versus Reigns versus Lesnar, and then, I mean, whoever the hell you want to have eat the pin there, I don't know.
Right. To me, I'd have Undertaker eat the pin, honestly. I know it's kind of a controversial thing because it's in his hometown.
Yeah.
But, he's already
I think
lost
someone on Puitov even suggested having Reigns lose the title to Taker and have Taker just leave the title in the ring as he walks out, and then we can have, Taker retires and we have a tournament or something like that to determine the new champion.
See, and, if none of this happened, I'll be honest, I would be all over that idea and I would love it. But seeing as how we just got done a tournament in November.
I was thinking the same thing when I saw that post, but it's just another idea. Honestly, if we're going with what I want to happen the most, based, again, you said Kevin Owens was kind of fantasy booking for you. To me, this is the ultimate fantasy because it requires Taker losing.
Right.
Bray Wyatt.
Yes.
Because we've seen Bray and Taker feud for the last 2 years, right? We saw, or not even 2, last year, we saw Bray lose to Taker at Mania, and then we saw Bray and the family lose to Taker and Kane at Survivor Series. Give Bray a frickin' bone, man. Let him have one win over The Undertaker and have it be in Taker's hometown and give Wyatt that heat so that we can finally turn this guy into a top heel rather than just being this guy that feuds with random people that don't ever stick around. let him feud with the Taker, but have him win, have him beat Undertaker in Texas, give him that Brock Lesnar heat, but this time keep him heel. With Taker, he's turned face and lost pretty much all of that heat that he got from beating Taker. Well, now you could do the same thing with Wyatt in Taker's hometown. You can give him that heat, and then you could feed him to Reigns, even if that's what you really want to do. I would prefer it if he won the title from Reigns, but if you even want to feed him to Reigns, it gives Reigns something, it gives the crowd something to cheer for Reigns about.
Dude, I'm all over that too. I mean, you know what a huge Bray Wyatt fan I was when he first came in. He's another guy, a lot like Owens, where I said that guy could be a top heel, carry so many feuds on his back in a moment's notice if you just took the time. And here's the thing, and this is just my opinion. I know there was a time, for quite a bit when a lot of people, I think even you included, because I know you would say this to me, where you felt like Bray was above the world title. Well, I feel like he's lost so much, not anymore. To me, I could buy him as world champion now if they ever took the interest, but his gimmick to me no longer has that intimidation or that allure where it's above championships, which is a shame because I really feel like if we were talking about most mishandled gimmicks, Bray would be in my top 5 because it's just ridiculous how they've handled him. But that would be a great way to get the heat back, maybe even more than Lesnar, because as you said, it's the added bonus of it's in Taker's hometown. Like, it's his people. It's Texas.
It'll never. No one can ever get more heat than Lesnar because Lesnar was the one that broke the streak. But still, like the idea that it's in Texas, I think, gets you closer to Lesnar's level as far as heat goes. And the difference there is, Lesnar was only heel for about a year after that. Like as soon as he signed that contract to come back for 3 more years, he was no longer a heel.
Right. Yeah. I think the biggest shame, I don't want to depart from this current conversation, but I think the biggest shame about John Cena's injury and really just all these injuries, but Cena in particular, the mid-card I think has lost a lot of intrigue now because of this, because Cena's biggest contribution to it, open challenges. And you and I mean, you know me and our year-end awards. Like I was talking about what I felt like Cena was going to do in 2016. One of my big things for Cena was I really thought he was going to feud with somebody like Samoa Joe or a big NXT guy over the U.S. Championship, kind of like he did with Owens. That may still happen, but it's going to be a lot later now. It's going to take a lot more time.
Yeah.
And honestly, here's my thing too. What I worry about, and it's nothing against Cena. This isn't trying to be like an anti-Cena diatribe. What I worry about is when he comes back, they may try and make his return like a comeback story to finally get that 16th world title, which, to me it's inevitable, so I'm not going to go kicking and screaming. Like, I understand it. It's a shame because the work he was doing in the mid-card, particularly the U.S. Championship in that whole division, was, to me, some of the best of his career. And I really thought he had more work to do, in my opinion. So it's a shame that he may already be kind of done that when he comes back from this. Because now to me, and again, well, I'm not even going to say no offense to Del Rio because I really don't care for the guy. But already you can see how Cena's absence, not even being the champion, has kind of diminished interest. And maybe I'm just speaking for myself in the U.S. title because Del Rio is just such a horrible champion to me.
Yeah.
I
would even have someone take the title off of Del Rio as soon as like Fastlane. To me, even though someone beating Del Rio for the title would be cool at Mania, I feel like he's one of those guys where like, why would you waste a big pop on Del Rio when you can have somebody beat a bigger name for a different title at Mania? And that's kind of the way WWE likes to do it, is they generally don't like to have more than one big babyface championship winner at Mania. So to me, like, I personally, just if it was me, and again, this is incredibly biased and bordering on fantasy, I would just have Nakamura win the title from Del Rio on his debut.
Yeah, I mean, either Nakamura or Styles, because we've talked about the New Japan guys taking it to
Well,
Del Rio.
We've already talked about, I don't think that Styles is going to be debuting in a singles match. I think he's debuting in the Rumble match.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, I would agree with you there.
Hell, if you want to give the title to Styles in his first pay-per-view appearance even, that would be, like, I would be down with that. But yeah, like, the general idea is get the title off of Del Rio and put it on somebody who people care about.
Exactly, because oddly enough, with Cena out of the picture, it's actually given the Intercontinental Championship a chance to really rise, because I've enjoyed, personally, Ambrose and Owens' work, and I feel like they're at least doing something. Del Rio, to me, the title's gotten lost, which is such a shame because of the League of Nations and everything.
I was actually just going to say, the reason to me that I would be cool with Nakamura versus Del Rio over Styles Del Rio is because you could play up the MMA background, because Nakamura and Del Rio have both had MMA careers.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You could very well do that. I just think, the sooner you get the championship off Del Rio and on somebody of greater prominence, presumably one of these New Japan signings, either
Yeah,
not or Styles would do, you get the title back on track. Because to me, if I'm John Cena, and obviously I can't speak for the man, but I would be so angry if all the work and the time I put into those reigns and the TV time, the matches and everything, just comes undone by this string of irrelevant champions. I just really don't want to see the title go down that path, and I fear that we're already starting down that path, so I don't really know the way to fix it, to get back to where we were,
yeah,
except without John Cena. And
yeah.
that just shows you how vital he's become to that championship and to the company as it relates to making the mid-card compelling and competitive and all that stuff.
And that's the thing too, is like you always kind of bring up, or at least you were bringing up quite a bit, John Cena having a U.S. Open challenge at WrestleMania. So I mean, if he would do that, and it would be nobody has seen the Undertaker since Survivor Series, and he comes out to answer the Open challenge, like that would be insane.
Oh, well, the stock of the U.S. Championship would never be the same again because you're talking Taker actually answering the challenge for the U.S. Championship. Like,
Right.
that's nuts. I think, it wouldn't be as nuts, but it would still be a big moment if, like, Finn Balor's music hits and he makes his prolonged, very aesthetic entrance.
You know
Or
what's crazy though, dude? I actually was reading the Wrestling Observer, and they said that the plan with Cena this year was actually for him to put over Reigns and not go against Taker.
wow. And see, to me, I don't want to say the injury, of course, is good in that because to me, the more logical card would be like what you and I have been talking about: Reigns
Yeah,
Lesnar rematch,
right.
and then 33 Cena Reigns.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, I don't think anybody wants to see Reigns versus Cena or Lesnar at this point, just because I don't think people want Reigns to main event WrestleMania again. But at this point, it's inevitable.
I'm telling everybody right now, WrestleMania 33, the main event is Roman Reigns
32.
versus John Cena. Or well, 32, it's going to be Reigns Lesnar, but I'm saying like you're getting your
Oh,
Reigns Cena match, which is going to be a year later now because of this
right.
injury. Yeah,
Yes. You
no,
know what? I'm glad you brought that up, though, because that allows us to kind of transition into our next discussion, which is how many injuries we've been getting in WWE lately. And
yes,
I think it's worth bringing up because you say WrestleMania 33 Reigns Cena, that's assuming both of them are healthy at WrestleMania 33. Because again, that was WWE's plan for this year, but the injuries prevent it from happening.
right, right. It's
Because
yeah.
and that's the big thing is there have been so many injuries, John. And I was talking to you about this earlier, and I really wanted to bring this up here. Have you noticed a trend with all of these injuries?
Yes, I know you illuminated to me that they're more like shoulder based. A good chunk of them are shoulder based injuries.
Almost all of them are shoulder based. I mean, now granted, you have your kind of freak accidents like Rollins with his knee, which I personally think that's probably got something to do with CrossFit, but I'm not gonna go spouting my anti CrossFit agenda here.
Right.
And then you've got, of course, Tyson Kidd was a freak accident, but
Yeah.
everybody else that's injured right now is shoulders. They're all shoulder injuries.
Yeah. Crazy.
John Cena, Cesaro, Hideo Itami, Sami Zayn, Randy Orton has a shoulder injury. Like, it seems like every single major injury that's happened in the last 6 months is shoulder.
Right.
And I don't know if you knew this, and I know most people probably don't, but there's been a change in WWE in their training methods, focusing more on heavy power lifts and heavy Olympic lifting. And I think that that's a direct correlation with all these shoulder injuries because you've got guys doing clean sweeps, and maybe they think, or even they're close to having the right technique down, but even just a slight mistake in the technique of doing a clean sweep, depending on how heavy the weight is, or even, and that's another thing too, with the ego that some of these guys have, they're all trying to one up each other. I'm sure that some of them are lifting heavier weights than they should be. And there you go. Your freaking shoulder is crap. And pile on top of that, the fact that the style of weightlifting that they're doing, the heavy Olympic style lifting, isn't designed to be done as a way to stay in shape to do something else. That is meant to be the only thing that you're doing. If you're doing really heavy Olympic style lifting, your body needs time to recover. And when these guys are doing this Olympic style lifting and then going out there and bumping all over the place, having a match the same night or the following night, it's not giving their bodies time to recover.
Right. It's pushing yourself. I mean, I've even learned, from a rudimentary standpoint, because I do my workouts, your body needs time to rest and recover. You got to be hydrated regularly. You got to take care of yourself. It's a lot like a machine. Machines break down. And that's another thing, too. You want to talk about the change in the workout program, which, do you even know what prompted this change? Did they give any reason why? Is it about a look? Is it about just whatever, or is it just like, let's give this a try? Was there any reason that prompted this workout change in the weightlifting program?
The fact that the change was made was in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and there's nothing more than that it changed. Like, they didn't give any kind of reason or anything, but just for speculation's sake, I would say probably because they wanted their superstars to look bigger. They wanted more muscles, like that's a Vince.
Right.
Vince has always been about that, but the difference is he's not going out there bumping multiple times a night, 5 nights a week, unlike everyone else that he's having do this. So I don't know.
I mean, to me, dude, and we've talked about this before, and I apologize in advance for being a broken record, but another thing, and I have to keep mentioning it because to me, I do see it as a legitimate problem. WWE in 2016 now, just such an oversaturation of content, like all the programming they have, all the events they do. Like, I'm sorry, and it's funny because it seems like these days all roads lead back to Lucha Underground. But I think one of the best things about that brand is that they have an off season. I think both for the audience and the performer, and keeping it on the performer, you need time to rest.
I think that, you know what though, John? My thing is, WWE wise, an off season just isn't viable. It's just not going to happen. But what I do think that they could do is they could split the roster up and have more of a rotation. And rather than having both halves, because they do that sometimes, like this past Raw was an episode where half the roster was out at some kind of a live event. But to me, why would you have both halves of the roster running at the same time, other than obviously Vince wants to make more money and that's how he does it? To me, I think that if you have these two halves of the roster, you can still run a Raw on Monday, a SmackDown on Tuesday, and then you could probably even get away with running shows 4 other nights a week, most likely just Wednesday through Saturday, but you can give people an every other day kind of schedule. Rather than having everybody work every day, you could have the guys work on Monday and Tuesday for Raw and SmackDown, and then Wednesday and Friday maybe, or Thursday and Saturday maybe, split it up a little bit, and rather than having splitting the roster into 2 halves and having both halves running shows on the same night, just have them split up, but have them run on different nights so as to give the people that are working the shows more rest.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, just getting that rest. And I mean,
it's the difference between working 5 matches a week and only working 3 matches a week. And,
yes,
that might not sound like a huge deal, but the fact that they're allowed to do, 40% less damage to their bodies weekly, it adds up. I mean, we've been talking about this for months, if not years now. Mexican and Japanese wrestlers last so much longer than WWE guys do, and they're so much less injury prone.
Yeah, because that there's a greater inactivity, and they employ certain methods where they get the proper rest. And I'm so glad you brought up the roster rotation, because to me, and it's angered me, when you have Raws that are 3 hours, which first of all, just too much for me for everybody. The fans, announcers, everybody. But that aside, if you're so committed to a 3-hour program, why don't you have a roster rotation in place? Because we have the regulars every week. And not only that, Ashton, there are some episodes where it's so bad, you see guys appearing twice in the same show.
Well, and that was another thing that I even wanted to bring up was, you say guys appearing twice, but the last big thing that happened on Raw that really, really pissed me off was Tommy Dreamer working 2 matches on the same night.
Yes.
Can I just point out, and this was actually something that he said on the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast, he doesn't remember most of the 90s. There are times when he has to call his wife, nowadays, not talking back in the 90s, we're talking right now, to remind him why he went somewhere to do something, because he forgets stuff that easily. This man is a walking human personified concussion, and they cleared him. But not only did they clear him, but they cleared him to work 2 matches in the same night, and yet Daniel Bryan can't get cleared despite having no symptoms whatsoever.
Exactly. It's completely absurd. When you told me that, I was shocked. I went from shocked to seething in no time flat, because you're talking that Tommy Dreamer gets this clearance, and Daniel Bryan, who has been chomping at the bit to get back in the ring and do his thing, especially now.
And that's the thing. I was just going to say, yeah, you were probably going to say it too. Now that Cena's out, they need that top baby face. Bryan is dude, I'm telling you, if they don't bring him back by WrestleMania, I will be shocked. And I do think that the intention the entire time was to hold him out until the Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania, just so that he doesn't ruin another, and it's a horrible way of putting it, but that's how they see it, so that he and his fans don't ruin another road to WrestleMania and WrestleMania show, specifically the main event.
Which is a damn shame, because they look at him as ruining. I look at the current state of WWE. He can only add to the WrestleMania experience.
Right.
Even if he is not in the main event. And here's the thing, too, and this is where I may offend both sides. So I want to be careful how I word it, but I see no other way to word it except just being straightforward. You know, if fans are mad that he's not going to main event, they need to get over it, because we need to look at the bigger picture of him getting on the card. And WWE needs to be big enough as a company, like, oh, they hurt our feelings, or they're going to get over it. Make your damn card, because from what I understand, he is dying to come back now, knowing that Nakamura and Styles are jumping ship. Like, he wants those matches.
He even lobbied to the WWE when they were over in Japan for Beast in the East. He wanted to wrestle Nakamura, and like that's like his dream match right now. He wants to wrestle Nakamura, and I mean, if I had to guess, I would say probably wants to do it at a WrestleMania. But still, like, that opportunity has never been more possible than it is now.
Yes, and you know, before that, his dream match was Brock Lesnar, in which guys like you and me and others said no freaking way would I feel comfortable with that. But Nakamura,
which is kind of ironic, we've got to point it out, because he's coming off of a concussion and he's going against a guy whose finisher is a knee to the head.
Exactly. You know, but to me, Nakamura, I don't know, I feel better about that prospect. Maybe I shouldn't, given the circumstances, but I do. You know, and I'm just like, give him the damn match. Because this isn't the time to be saying, oh, why isn't he main eventing, or this or that, or for a company to be saying, ooh, you know, that hostility, that's pretty strong. I guess we need to pull back. No, you need to come out guns blazing with your problems right now. Yeah. Because to me, everybody's dropping like flies. And I'm not saying, here's the thing, I just want to, before I get ahead of myself and I put the cart before the horse, I am not saying that WrestleMania 32 is going to suck this year. I am just saying the landscape's looking very interesting given these injuries. And here's the thing, Ashton, I hate to be that guy, who's to say the injuries are even done? You know, because WrestleMania is in April. Yeah. God knows what'll happen between now and then. You know, it's ridiculous to think about.
It is. I mean, that's the scary thing. Like, I feel like they're freaking duct taping Roman Reigns right now. Like, no, you are not getting hurt. You're going to make it to WrestleMania, and we're going to get you over, damn it.
And, you know, I'm so glad you said that, because, again, I don't want to be a jerk or be a certain way, but I worry about Roman Reigns. Like, honestly, for all the people that can boo, my only reaction is a sigh of relief when I see him on my TV every week. Because the moment I read that he may be injured or whatever, I'm thinking, well, what now? I mean, you want to talk about being torpedoed. Like, it's ridiculous. I was relieved when apparently Sasha Banks' injury that she suffered, she's only going to need a few weeks of rest. Like, anytime I see injury anymore, it's like I have this bodily reaction. I just tense up. And I think, oh, God, how bad is it? Because that's how bad this crisis is right now. And it never used to be that way.
Yeah,
crazy,
and apparently when Mojo Rawley was out with his injury not so long ago, that was his shoulder, too.
So another shoulder injury.
Yep.
I mean, oh my God, man, that new program. I mean, there has to be a correlation, I would think.
It's so, well, it's not funny at all, but it's so, you know, worth pointing out, I should say. For the longest time, you and I, we're Falcons fans. We're Atlanta Falcons fans. We cheer for the Falcons in the NFL. And for the last 2 years, not so much this year, but in 2013 and 2014, they were just absolutely plagued with injuries. Like, I remember last year there was a game where we had to have a tight end play offensive tackle because we just didn't have any offensive tackles left because they had all gotten injured in the same game. And what were we starting to do? We were starting to immediately say, okay, well, I mean, obviously there's a problem with the conditioning coaches, because the conditioning coaches are supposed to be in charge of making sure that these players are in game shape and that kind of stuff. And when something like this happens in WWE, you've got to draw attention to the same thing. I mean, there's got to be some kind of a problem. It can't be just a coincidence that all of these guys are getting hurt at the same time. And to me, the two things that I immediately am drawn to are this Olympic powerlifting that they've been doing, which obviously is probably the root of all the shoulder injuries, but then also the rise of CrossFit. And CrossFit is this big deal now, and what it basically does is it makes you look like 1,000, or I guess in this case $1 billion, but it's not functional.
Right. So I
It's
guess it appeals to the aesthetic, but in terms
right.
of like functionality and actual results, it's lacking.
Yeah. I mean, I think Seth Rollins might be the exception to the rule, but even he has a blown out knee now.
Right.
Because Seth Rollins is one of the biggest criticism of CrossFit is that it kills your endurance. Well, I don't think Seth Rollins' endurance is really in question.
No, I mean, you're talking about a guy that, I mean, he looks to me to be in the type of shape where he's an Iron Man. He could go
Right.
like those 60 minutes if he needed to.
Well, and I mean, we've already seen him go 30 with Ambrose.
Exactly. So clearly, that whole conditioning, like in that aspect, isn't the problem. I don't know, man. I mean, I really haven't done much research into CrossFit, so my opinion is grossly uninformed, so I won't even offer it on the table here.
Right.
But it does seem interesting to me that they change up the weightlifting program and then all these injuries sprout up. You've got to be looking more for efficiency. I understand that it's television and that because it has that theater aspect, you want a certain look to be attained.
Right.
But there's got to be a better and healthier way to do it rather than killing your guys here, because then you just have no show. And what the hell's the point? I don't know, man. It's a difficult time.
And then the only other thing that I really wanted to touch on in this, and because we are just kind of addressing in general the WWE's treatment of their talent, I really had to be kind of wishy-washy with that title, because I can't say treatment of their employees, because technically by law WWE's performers are not employees. And I wanted to bring this up because very recently the Buffalo Bills cheerleaders, who were in the exact same situation where the Bills organization claimed that they were independent contractors, and they made, I think it was like only like $1,500 a season, despite being told, you have to have your hair done this way, you have to weigh this amount, you have to, take your makeup off before you go to bed so that you don't break out. Like, they were being told specifically, like, what products to use, how to do their hair, how to do their makeup, what to do, as far as, taking care of their skin goes, and that they had to have their hair done up in a glamorous way anytime they went into public and all this stuff, and yet they were still claiming that they're independent contractors. Well, the Buffalo Bills lost that court case now.
Right.
So now the Buffalo Bills are going to actually have to treat these cheerleaders as if they're employees, which they are. And it really just makes me wonder, how far behind is the WWE? Because from what I understand, Raven actually went after them for a lawsuit saying that he was an employee when he worked for them and not an independent contractor. And I'm not completely sure what the result of that court case was, but actually, no, you know what? I think that technically WWE won the court case, but Raven is still going after them for something else. I just am not sure what it is.
Yeah, that's always been a very prickly thing, because I've been somebody for quite a few years where I say, oh, I would love it if they could unionize, but they can't do that because of the type of workers that they are.
They tried to. That's the thing. I don't know if you knew about this, but I think it was Jesse the Body Ventura back in the 80s tried to form a labor union, and Hogan stopped him.
Wow, scumbag Hogan. What a surprise.
There's a lot of really scummy shit that Hogan's done, but I think that might be the all-time worst, because like, if you look just in hindsight, if they had actually managed to form a union way back then, how many lives would have been saved from people not needing to work the ridiculous schedule, from people being able to make an appropriate amount of money and being able to afford their own medical bills after they retire, longer careers, fewer deaths, fewer injuries. Like, the face of wrestling today would be just so much better than it is.
Oh, certainly. I mean, I don't want to get too into like a political slash economic commentary here because this is wrestling, but I mean, unions have power. When you come together and you show that solidarity, you get things done. And the idea that Hogan probably went into business for himself because he's thinking, oh, well, if unions kind of tip the scale, that could mean that everybody gets more, but I, in association, would get less. And broke that up, like, oh, that pisses me off so much because you're right. They would have had checks and balances in place to keep guys healthier. Honestly, the whole concussion reforms and everything, we probably would have gotten those. I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but maybe we would have gotten those a few decades earlier. I don't
Yep.
know. Maybe we wouldn't have. But, I mean, it took
That
them
only
so.
happened in what, like 2007, 2008 or so?
Yeah, it was in the wake of the Benoit tragedy, dude. So if you
The
think
Benoit
about
tragedy might not have ever even happened.
yeah, yeah. And, dude, like for me, it's just crazy. I feel like if they were able to unionize a lot in terms of like health and wellness, so much progress would have been made so much more quickly. Because even if you think about it, the concussion program and performance and all that stuff, that's still kind of in its infancy, more or less. Sorry, I'm getting excited. I can't even speak. It's only been like 6 or 7 years, not that long. Whereas I feel like if they had the power to really stand up for themselves and kind of come together, maybe we'd be talking in the decades now, and like you said, the face would completely change. WWE to me, if an off season isn't viable, I don't know why they're not doing a roster rotation because I mean I think that is viable, especially on a 3 hour show and so many people that don't get TV time. It's just their current structure and their way of treating talent is in need of serious reform. And I wouldn't even know where to start cutting, to be honest, and working. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of reading up on the Raven case. Apparently, um, no formal decision was ever rendered by a court because I guess Raven settled with the WWE or the case got thrown out. I had something to do with the statute of limitations being up. I'm not completely sure, but he's the only person that I know of that's ever gone after WWE for the whole independent contractor versus employee thing. But at the end of the day, everything that goes into what the WWE requires their employees, and I'm going to say that now, to do dictates that they are employees. You can't tell an independent contractor how to live their life once they leave the organization to go home and be with their families or whatever, and WWE does.
Yeah, yeah, it's just crazy to me how that all shakes out. I don't even, I don't even again, I don't even know really what to do because they're such a massive corporation and there are so many talents, so many people currently on the shelves. And again, I think serious reform is needed and somebody's got to do it. And see, and I am going to say it, the really scummy thing is no reform is going to happen until the chickens come home to roost. Now, technically, I would say that this is such a situation, these injuries piling up and everything. But when I say chickens coming home to roost, I'm talking something akin to the Benoit situation. Because you see something like that, and then they say, oh, well, I guess business as usual isn't going to cut it anymore because the press is breathing down our neck and we've got all this stuff happening. So unless it's a tragedy, I don't see any serious discussions about reforms or policies or anything really being had. I mean, maybe that's me being too harsh, and I can readily admit that. But I mean, come on, it took them this long to even have a concussion policy and everything in place because of that tragedy. What's it going to take for them just to treat their performers like decent human beings? You know?
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing too is independent contractors have to pay a higher tax. They pay higher taxes too than employees because employer-employee relationships, basically you get a percentage of every paycheck taken in taxes that gets matched by the employer, whereas with independent contractors, they don't have employers to match their contribution, so they have to make up the difference themselves. So, there's a lot of really scummy shit, and the worst part is the lack of health insurance. Like,
Yeah, man.
most wrestlers now, obviously guys like Brock and Cena and Big Show and Taker and stuff, they get travel expenses handled, but that is a perk in a pro wrestler's contract, not a given, which it should be, because with the way that they travel, the fact that you've got divas making between $75,000 and $100,000 in a year, the amount of money that the WWE expects them to spend on just keeping themselves looking a certain way, topped with the amount of money that they have to spend in order to make it to each show travel wise, they're getting paid scraps. It's bad.
It's really bad, dude. It's really bad. I mean, You could even talk about like CM Punk's accusations and so many stories even before that. Just a really bad industry, health wise. And again, I do think so much
And
needs
I
to
do think
change.
WWE is the worst of it because, I mean, obviously, I don't think that there's a wrestling company on the planet that actually technically has contracts that say that they are the employers and their wrestlers are their employees, because that just really wouldn't work with anyone but WWE given how big they are. But I think that the big difference is the schedule, the WWE schedule. I mean, how many guys has the WWE lost because of the schedule? How many guys has WWE lost to TNA because of the schedule? Right off the top of my head, I want to say Jeff Hardy, Kurt Angle, and RVD all left WWE because of the schedule and went to TNA for it.
Yeah, I mean Kurt Angle in particular, because I mean Jeff, I only read so much about Kurt Angle though. I was on top on because at the time that was huge when
Yeah.
he made the jump, and I remember interviews saying like he went to Vince and he said, Vince, I can't keep doing this. I'm getting burned out. And at first I was angry at Kurt because I didn't know the whole story, and I'm thinking, oh my god, he jumped ship. He's like, oh, I need to take time, and then he does this. I was angry, but then when you read more into the story, he went to Vince and really started him like, please, can I go part time? Can I get like a Legends deal? Can we talk contracts? He said he was starting to get addicted to painkillers, which I can readily believe, very readily. And Vince would not budge. And that again is the problem. Maybe I'm putting too much stock in Triple H, but I would hope that if he was in charge and people would come in and say, "Hey, I'm having these concerns," he would listen and he would be proactive. I think Vince has this idea like, "Oh, my guys can go on forever," and he runs them into the ground. I mean, Stone Cold, even when he came back, he had to sit Vince down because Vince was ready to put him right back into storylines. You know what I
And you
mean?
know what's really
Yeah.
sad too?
What's that?
The fact that the WWE does what you just said. They take these wrestlers and they run them into the ground. And they're so aware that they do it. And not only that they do it, but that it's an evil thing that they do it. That they've got their top heel figures, Stephanie and Vince McMahon, threatening to do the same thing to Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
So to me, like, not only is that you acknowledging, like, yeah, we treat our wrestlers like shit, but you're also openly acknowledging, like, yeah, treating our wrestlers like shit is a bad thing that we're going to have the bad guys on our television show say they're going to do.
Yeah. I mean, crazy to me to think about. And then I find it funny, dude, when they when the reports came out, oh, we don't like Finn working all these NXT events because we don't want him to burn out before he gets the main run. Why? So you can't get your mileage out of him and burn him out there and run him into the ground there? Like, I don't see any sense of priority, dude. I'm sorry, like I don't, and I don't want to be overly critical, but that's just the way I
Why
see
not?
it. And exactly. Why not? Why not? I mean, I don't see anything happening here, which is a damn shame because if WWE actually had a greater ethics in terms of health and wellness and their policy and things like that, you have one of the best rosters in the world right now, and it keeps growing. If only you had the conditioning and the wellness to match, you'd be a superpower. I mean, they'd like to think they're already a superpower, and I'm sure in a lot of cases that's true. But I mean, again, look at promotions on the rise like Lucha Underground that say to themselves, hey, we get an off season. These guys continue to work where they want to work, and maybe they even get to rest if they want to, and things like that. That kind of model, I think sooner or later is going to become the dominant model. I hope. I mean, maybe that's just optimism, but WWE needs to get with the times. They need to understand that human beings, like anything, need rest and they have a breaking point and they need to adjust accordingly. The idea that they could change their weight program simply so guys could look better when clearly it's not working, when guys are getting hurt because they're not used to it, just speaks volumes, but they're still doing it, it makes you want to bang your head against the desk. It really does.
Yeah, yeah. And, I'm glad you brought up Lucha Underground earlier because obviously WWE's never going to do it, but I do think that one major play that Lucha Underground has going for it that WWE doesn't and never will is, like you said, that off season, because that gives and not only that, but Lucha Underground also does all of their tapings way ahead of time. So basically they're using their talent for a month or two, and then you've got 9 months worth of programming, but then the talent during those 9 months can go wrestle elsewhere. They can go to PWG and wrestle. They can go to, Revolution Pro or Progress, or obviously most of the guys there go to AAA. or they have other places that they can go to wrestle and make more money on top of the money that they make off of the Lucha Underground tapings.
Exactly.
So if a guy just wants to be like, yeah, I'm a Lucha Underground wrestler, and they don't want to wrestle anywhere else, I don't know if that'll necessarily be enough for them to get through an entire year as far as salary goes. But if that's their choice, they can work for 2 months, and then if they don't want to put their body through hell, if they want to live a normal human life outside of Lucha Underground, they can do that.
And you know what it comes down to, Ash? It comes down to one word with the way you just articulated it: options.
Yeah.
Other wrestling promotions are giving these guys options. I feel like with WWE, they don't give guys any options.
Or girls. The girls have it even worse
yeah.
than the guys, because obviously the guys have these ridiculous body standards to live up to, but so do the women. But then the women also have their hair that they have to worry about, and the women also have makeup that they have to worry about, and all these different things that guys, we don't even think about.
You're absolutely right. When I said guys, I meant like generally, so I apologize. But you're right. I am glad you brought up the women specifically, because them to anybody, a human body is a human body, male or female. It needs rest. It needs to know its limits. And already, like, I do think back to the Punk podcast when he just came home from surgery, he was recuperating, and Vince is like, "Hey, you ready to get back to work? You ready to get back inside?" Well, no, let me rest. And see, that's the problem. I don't think Vince really recognizes, because he's not out there competing every night. How could he understand the toll that it takes? But that's why I like what Lucha Underground is doing, and what other promotions I think, are doing more on the indie scene and whatnot. Again, WWE needs to adapt. They need to get with the program. They need to get with the times. They need to understand that you may have the best locker room in the world right now, and I do believe that. But without the proper health and conditioning, what good are you going to get out of it?
I think that really at this point the best option for them is to just ease off of live events. And obviously they're never going to just stop running live events completely, but the fact that we've got guys like Kevin Owens and sort of the workhorses, and even the women, I think like Sasha and Becky are probably in this category too, working 5 matches a week is ridiculous. And on top of that, that's just the thing. If they were just working 5 matches a week, it would still be too much. But top that off with the fact that they have to stay in shape, they have to work out, they have to worry about getting to the weight room and lifting and that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, it's way too much. And the injury plague that we're dealing with right now is a result of it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Working that rate of matches is just insane. And that shouldn't be the case for anybody. I've already expressed my grievances on Raws where I see people compete twice. It's a 3-hour show. So much of your undercard is ignored. I'm not even kidding, folks, because I know a lot of you guys in the comments would back me up on this. There are shows where guys compete twice, and yet guys like Damian Sandow are nowhere to be found. Use the resources that you have, but use them intelligently. That's, I think, what I'm really starting to get angry about, is that they're not looking at these guys and thinking, okay, how can we get the most out of them, but not breaking them to do it? And, it's crazy. John Cena, to me, I'm sorry to say it, I know it's kind of morbid, but the best thing about when that guy gets injured, he gets time off. Because otherwise, I think they, want him there again every week. The big live events, this, that, and the other, the Make-A-Wish, everything. There's no time to slow down. Mentally, physically, that's just got to be so taxing on people. And you see the result. So, but you know what, Ashton, to kind of conclude my side of things, because I'm fearing I'm starting to get redundant, the biggest agitation for me is, even in the face of all these injuries, WWE isn't going to learn anything. They're not going to learn anything. And as soon as these guys get healthy and they're back in the mix, it'll be like nothing ever happened.
Even before they're fully healthy and ready to get back in the mix, and they still will be.
Exactly. You know that they'll just brush it off like, okay, well, we got through that. Business as usual again. Like,
yep.
The idea that you won't even learn anything from this. Because even if they did learn something and they'd say, okay, guys, we need to start changing things, and it would be rough at first and maybe mistakes would be made, I could at least respect you and commend you because, okay, guys, you're making an effort at least.
Well, that's what happened with the wellness policy.
Yeah.
They had it kind of rough at first. They had to suspend some of their top guys, like Regal when he was having his big run, and Kennedy when he was about to be on top of the world, and of course Orton's suspensions hurt. But they got through those, and the wellness policy in the long run has probably saved lives.
Yeah, you got to get through the rough patches before something really starts to show its value. And it's worth it. Because if you're worried about not getting the most out of a guy like Finn Balor or this one or that one, well, then look in the mirror. You're going to find both the problem and the solution there. If you really have the willingness to tackle the problem, they've got intelligent people in WWE. Guys like Regal, Triple H, Matt Bloom. I think they're all intelligent guys. I'm sure some intelligent women there. I won't knock Stephanie, get her in on the conversation, but honestly,
I'm not going to talk about Stephanie.
keep Vince out of the meetings for me personally. But
Well,
regardless,
for me, keep Steph out of the frickin' meetings too, because she's no better than her father.
Well, there you go. But regardless, I'm saying get the intelligent people together, have a dialogue, and hell, if you have to make the likes of Vince and Stephanie listen, plant them in a chair and tie them up and just let them hear you out. Because this can't keep going on the way it is. This is ridiculous. I mean, I'm already heartsick over Seth Rollins. The idea that Cena's out when he was
dude,
doing
I was
great
watching some WWE 2015 highlights earlier today, and oh my god, I miss Cesaro.
You and me both, man. It's tough, and I think about them as people.
I miss having somebody to cry about not getting pushed enough, John.
I know, right?
We're running out of people that don't get pushed enough.
But then you think about them as people, because, yes, I love Seth Rollins the performer and Cesaro the performer, but when you really take a step back and you realize, well, my God, these people do this because they have livelihoods to sustain just like you and I do.
Yeah.
That is so fucking sad. Seth is at home now, rehabbing that knee. It was great because we watched Up, Up, Down, Down today, and we actually saw him walk a little bit, and he is getting better, which almost made me cry. I am not going to lie. But, in all seriousness, guys, you look at these guys, and they're hurt, and they're sitting at home, and I don't know if they have the same financial worries as most people. I'm not going to get into that, but it does have to, weigh on the mind. How am I going to maintain all this? Is the money going to be coming in okay? Everybody has worries. Everybody, especially in this day and age. And when you're hurt, you must be so angry at the world. I would be. And just think, well, what am I going to do? And WWE isn't going to recognize that pain. They're not going to stop and think, well, gee, I wonder if Seth is feeling okay about his living arrangement and the bills he has to pay and the things he has to do, or Cesaro or this one or that one, because to them it's business as usual. And that's what really breaks my heart.
And I think that that's the perfect point to end this commentary on. We will be back tomorrow night with our Raw Twitwow, first one since August, but we really just wanted to get this kind of stuff off our chest, because if we wouldn't have done it in a separate commentary, it would have ended up leaking over into the Raw Twitwow, and that would have ended up making it like a 2-hour show, which we do not want to do. So, that being said, thanks to everybody for listening, and, get some discussion started in the comments. We want to know, what do you guys think WWE can change to fix this problem? Because obviously there is a problem that needs fixing. We offered some solutions. I'm curious to see what some of you guys have to say. So until tomorrow night, let's get some discussion going. It should be interesting.